Steve.
That's just, he's only 4 foot long.
And he was about 7. Yeah, he's saying that, seriously.
Okay, we'll get started. Councilman Cathy won't be here tonight, or at this point at least, and Councilmember Pollock stepped out for this conversation, so. Oh, perfect, okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You want me to dive into that?
Yep,
Okay.
let's downtown open container.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Krista's pulling this up for you to refresh your memory with regard to what this item is all about. As you will recall, the first iteration of this program happened last summer, although I think we got a little bit of a late start, if I remember correctly, in terms of opening the downtown and the Yellowstone district for an open container area along the lines of what you see here on this exhibit. And those streets would indicate which streets are eligible for this type of provision. The basic idea is, and Fleur or Krista or Jolene, if you could correct me where I'm wrong, Keith. The basic idea is that for those who want to participate, meaning alcohol dealers and vendors, they would basically come in, put together a permit for this, which would allow them the opportunity to distribute armbands, wristbands or whatever, that would indicate the facilities that are allowing their customers, or basically providing for their customers, to wander in this open container area, frequent businesses, activities, whatever might be going on, with an open container type beverage in hand. Ostensibly, there would be businesses that would not participate and therefore do not have that provision to allow their customers to walk around with an open container in hand by virtue of the absence of that wristband that would suggest their participation or not. That's the idea. It's meant for a limited duration. At this point, we'd basically be recommending Memorial Day to Labor Day. Is that right?
Inclusive of the Mondays of
Those holidays.
So the
weekend.
Friday before Memorial Day through the Monday of Labor Day.
Perfect. I asked the chief to kind of look into some of the activities of last year in order to give you a feel for how it went last year, being the inaugural year of this idea. And Chief, if you'd like to take a little time to kind of cover that for us, I'd appreciate that.
There was almost zero participation in it, so we have no data to indicate that it requires a police presence or a lack thereof. There was virtually no participation. A couple people, and that was it. So the inaugural attempt late in the summer of the COVID summer was, if anything, was to start working with our vendors or retailers down there to learn the process. But there is no viable data to be obtained from that. We rode around on bikes. We didn't see anybody participating in it. There didn't appear to be any participation. However, I think that this year is a lot of pent-up excitement. I think this has the potential to be pretty huge this summer. So, and Carter, if I could just, Mayor, I'm sorry, if I could just add one more thing. The armbands were an indication that this person has been checked for their age, but the drink, the cup, the holder, was the thing that we promulgate. That indicates that the container, the liquid therein is approved. So that is something we need to be prepared to provide, is those marked, identified cups.
Okay. Do you mind if I turn some time over to Carla to talk about permitting?
Sure. Did you have a question?
I think you kind of answered. I mean, you don't have any data or anything to suggest why last year, but it can be assumed COVID probably played a factor in.
Without question, absolutely.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
I do have one question, but we also started late.
And we did. Oh,
Yes.
that's right. Okay.
I'm concerned about the amount of overtime it's going to cost you, because I did read the memo. When we've done some rock the block stuff with my wife and I've gone down and we've done some stuff at the gas lights, they provide extra security for those things. because you can see the guys walking around with the security shirts on.
Sure.
So I'm just curious is it absolutely necessary that we incur this added expense until we find out if it's even needed? Because we do have patrol people in the event that something was to happen, and then we could adjust from there, is my thought.
Yeah, Mayor, Councilman, excellent points, and we're fully committed to, we don't know what it's gonna take. We've kind of studied, using our experience with similar type events. This one's, more than rock the block. So it's got a long area, but it's got these big, large, open, adjacent parking lots, a lot of area to patrol. We plan on playing it by ear. If we go a couple weekends into this and realize, okay, we got cops standing around talking to people, not a bad thing. But if we go a couple weekends into it and we find that we don't need that many, or potentially we could find, oh wow, we need more. We are absolutely committed to determining the least amount of officer presence that is needed. So the figures that you've given was our rough estimate. Okay, if we anticipate X amount of crowd, this is what it would take to cover that area, in a semi-efficient way. But we're absolutely, we don't want it. We don't need that extra overtime. The staffing is an issue to me, and so if I can curtail it, believe me, I'm going to be cutting back on that just as fast as I can. A lot's going to depend upon the compliance of the participants and whether or not they're following the rules.
Well, and just as a follow-up, so I was more concerned for you and your budget. I'd love to have 100 officers out there because I think it's amazing for the public. But when I saw this, I was wondering if your opinion was that we should pass this based on your budgetary concerns.
Mayor, Council, that is a loaded question, and I'm going to answer as truthfully as I can. The Casper Police Department is here to support economic development and growth and economic opportunities and quality of life in the city of Casper. And so that's one of the things you task us with, and so we provide those services. Overtime is always a large portion of my budget. It's one that we manage desperately on a month-to-month basis. This current year, I'm understandably over budget on that line item of overtime, and so what I am submitting to you is our support for, if this helps develop our downtown, it helps establish a vibrant downtown area. The police department's here to support that, and we will accommodate. And if it becomes burdensome, I would hope that you would remember this discussion if I came back to you for a budget amendment at the end of this summer of, holy cow, that was far more work than we thought it was going to be.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, currently our process for permitting open containers is we have each individual or organization apply for one. They have to issue wristbands, and they have to put signs out that say no alcohol beyond this point. It's my understanding that if we do it like we did last year, we will just open that up. We will still put signs out. We will require wristbands, and what we did last year is we did put like a restriction on how much hard alcohol versus how much beer. That's how we permit them this year.
So, Mr. Mayor, Carla, what is the fee for that?
There is no fee for an open container.
Okay, there is no fee. Okay, all right. And when you say the signs will be put up, you mean at like key intersections and so forth,
Yes,
right?
I believe last year Streets did that for us.
Okay.
And I did speak with Streets. They did not accrue any overtime regarding trash pickup or putting up the signs. Of course, it was for a very short amount of time. Yeah.
So each of the establishments that want to participate just need to get a free open container permit from you?
How it worked last year was you guys just deemed those ones in purple. That was the open container permit. All we had to do was get a picture, a digital copy of what wristband they were going to use, and then I passed that on to PD.
Maybe I asked that wrong. But the establishments in that area, do they need to apply weekly then to you, or?
They did last time. Again, it was only a very short amount of time. They did have to let us know when they wanted to participate and what wristbands they were going to use. If they changed wristbands, they had to let us know. There was not a lot in there, in that area, because, again, not everybody can participate without a permit.
Councilman Johnson.
Are those permits daily, weekly? Like, is there an expiration on them?
Open container,
Yes.
they're a 24-hour permit.
Okay.
And I don't mean that they can drink for 24 hours.
Right,
6
no.
a.m. to 2 a.m.
Right, right. But if they want to participate the next day, they have to get a new permit.
Yes. If we didn't open this up, yes, they would. And for instance, Rock the Block, since we don't have this established yet, they give me one permit with all the days they want. And then I just send one permit to Sergeant Bullard, and he reviews them and opens them. Same with their catering permit if they need that also.
With the list of dates.
With the list of dates.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Councilman Gamble.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Carla. Is there any way for the city, I know we don't have a lot of participation at the moment, but say we have a dozen businesses participating with a dozen different wristbands and stuff. Is there any way to standardize, you know, any participating business has to get their wristbands through us or something, and like, so that it's standardized, so that, I imagine that'd be hard for the chief to keep 6, 7 different wristbands, you know?
Well, we could. It would cost us, of course, but we could actually do that. We talked about that last year.
Okay, and we could potentially charge those wanting to participate, you know, we could cover the cost potentially by charging.
I believe so. I'd have to ask
Okay.
John if we could charge, but I would think so.
I missed that. I was paying attention to a different conversation.
I was asking in regards to standardizing the wristbands that participating businesses would use. I wonder if the city would have the ability to provide those wristbands and then charge participating businesses for however many they needed.
You know, I guess you could. You know, you've got this free opportunity, but yeah, if you want to use the wristbands, you get so much per gross or whatever.
My mind goes there because if you know, I've never bought wristbands, but if you can walk into Sam's Club and buy a big old pallet of yellow ones, my mind immediately goes to, people texting each other, this establishment's using the yellow ones, can we find yellow wristbands elsewhere and, you know, get around it or something like that. So if we had City of Casper branded wristbands that everyone had to use, you know, the chief would be able to identify that maybe from like half block away, so.
And I think, yeah, you have something that we did last year.
I just wanted to point out that you're asking, Mayor,
Yeah.
you're asking great questions. We wanted to, you know, the wristbands, we want them individualized to the retailer.
Okay.
The reason is because if there's an 18-year-old walking around with a wristband, I need to know who to go to say how'd this happen.
Okay.
You know, so they can't be, you know, if we want to do City of Casper, Frontier, or Gaslight, we could do that, but I kind of need that ability to go to and ask the hard questions. How did this happen? Or did this minor conspire with somebody to get a wristband fraudulent?
I kind of like the idea of each of them having their own with their name on it, just for that reason, that if something happens, you know where they came from originally.
What about the cups though? Because I know that you mentioned the cups. So is that something that, I mean, the wristband could identify where they maybe like, you know, purchase the beverage, but maybe the cups could be like a standardized City of Casper cup that we just, you know, we buy them, whatever, charge that cost to distribute them or whatever it may be, or are the cups really not a concern?
That's what council, we worked with council last time. That's the decision that we went with. So
Okay.
that we, you know, so what I'm not familiar with, and maybe Carla can help me out, is whether or not we've actually secured cups. We went through a lot of machination to the size of cups and, you know, whether they're translucent and, you know, because that's the kicker. We don't want people walking around with
Yeah.
beer bottles,
Yeah.
you know, so they end up broken and we have to deal with that. So a lot of work went into this, but my recollection is that the ordinance is designed to facilitate this by, you know, weed control, the nature of those wristbands and the cup, and they would have to secure the cup from us at a reasonable cost.
Yeah.
So,
Last year, we did look into cups, but we did not purchase them for.
Well, there's only a few weekends, so that makes sense to me, but, you know, with looking at the entire summer. Yeah.
Guess I'm just gonna ask the question, would it be simpler to go to just saying that there has to be a clear plastic cup and let them provide it? That way we're not
Yeah, I don't know why we have to be in the middle of it.
cheap.
again, it's the control mechanisms. What I don't want is the kids going, okay,
Yep.
clear plastic cup. You know, I fill it up in my car, that kind of thing. So, you know, this is the way for us to introduce reasonable safeguards, so that this is done in a way that it invites people to come downtown, not steers them away because of shenanigans.
Yep.
So, I'm going to expose myself and
What?
it's kind of not drinking thing.
Let me know when she's
I mean,
done.
I don't, I'm a little confused. So, is this just opening this up for the entire summer so that people can just wander around all around downtown with drinks, or through the purple area whenever they want to, or is it each location then has to apply for permits and then you're just drinking at that location? I have not wandered around downtown drinking, so I'm not sure what we're really talking about here.
Sure. Chief?
So, thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity to make sure we're all on the same page. I think the goal is to establish a foot traffic, open air environment to encourage people to walk from business to business to business in this area. That's why the very specific outline of this is to kind of capture those destination restaurants and licensed liquor establishments, so that you may choose to go to one. Hey, let's walk to our next destination for dinner, and then someplace else after dinner. I think council's goal was to encourage a nighttime presence and walkability in our downtown area. So that was the goal, and the police department has tried to give input into to keep it safe, and to avoid litter, to avoid expansion to areas that we don't want it to go. And really, it was an experiment to, hey, let's try and see if this works or not.
So it's not a specific event.
No,
It's limited to Fridays and Saturdays, Sundays.
Actually, the ordinance is very open. It's completely, last year, our council decided Fridays and Saturdays from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. But the ordinance itself is written Memorial Weekend to Labor Day weekend. And you guys get to decide. This, like the downtown area is the whole area. This is what was decided on last year. And then what hours, what days that you guys want. That was decided by council.
So a lot of those places have events all at the same time. So
Yep.
rather than chug your beer at Davis Street Station, so
Right.
you can go down to Yellowstone Garage, you can just bring it with you.
Well, she threw me when she said that there's signs that says you can't.
Right,
go.
so like as you're walking, I can't make a right down this street. and
Right,
There'll be a sign
right.
that says, do not bring your open container down here. So it keeps
Yeah.
it in that area.
Stagger down this line. Got it.
But don't go left.
I like keeping it open because it gives them a better opportunity to do it on other nights, like Rock the Blocks on Thursday night.
And then go down to Davis Street Station.
Yeah,
or go to the
exactly.
office or
So I don't,
221 or
I kind of like
whatever.
that, but I don't know what that does to you.
Yeah, I was.
We just need a heads up. I got to be able to staff this stuff.
Well, that would come from your office, right, Carla?
Once the days were decided, we would just let everybody know who was participating.
Okay, so we need to know, first of all, if you're good with it, and if you are, then what days?
I don't think we should limit the days. That's what we were talking about when you were talking with Carla. The chief said as long as he has a heads up, so if they were to, if they tell Carla we want to do it on Tuesday and Wednesday this week for something special, as long as they let the chief know, he said he's good.
Okay? And the hours, Carla?
Last year, the hours were 5 p.m. to 10 p.m.
5 p.m. to 2 a.m.
because we did.
Yeah, it should be extended
Well, yeah, because
because,
Gaslight has concerts and stuff that are going
yeah,
past
and
10.
so
Yeah.
Rock the Block, it goes later than 10
Yeah.
o'clock.
Is that
So it should be from 5 to 2.
5 to 2? Okay. And then the only thing, that area that is up there?
Yes. Are you? Yeah. I mean, I guess while we're throwing comments out there, I guess maybe I need more information from the chief on if it's allowed every day. You know, because I want to be mindful of you know, his budget and whatnot. And so if we have somebody, one of these establishments downtown that chooses because they're free to just, I'm gonna apply for it maybe every day during the summer. Can one person not necessarily abuse because we're setting the parameters, but exploit maybe the ordinance to the point that I could see, you know, the chief like just having to have someone down there every night because one, maybe two establishments want to take advantage of it all summer long. That would be a situation that I personally would want to avoid. So, you know, I might potentially explore just Thursdays or Sundays or something like that. But I'd be interested to hear from you.
Chief?
Thanks.
Mayor, thank you. So again, we're kind of reinventing this thing on the fly. So a lot of time was spent on this. The police department absolutely would prefer not to do this every night. There's no way I can staff it. My officers eventually would quit signing up for it because you can only work. I already have limits on them. You can't work more than these hours because I would need you physically and mentally sharp in our profession. So I can't do it. And so we specifically worked with council to come up with the weekends. Now, they always have the ability to apply for a special permit.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think we're referring to is they have the ability to do these things during the other nights of the week. And those permit applications get me some more time to look at the particulars of that. This open container thing is kind of a pre-approved by council. They need to go through the motions to get this thing authorized. But it allowed me to staff and schedule. What I'm hoping is a tour of duty that my officers will enjoy, talking with people, walking on foot in the beat, being on bikes on this beat, and actually associating with our citizens. But we definitely, I strongly advocated for not expanding it just whenever, but we're doing it on these 2 weeks and these 2 nights. And if they wanted to, if they had something special they were trying to do, then they go through the normal process. You know, so as far as conjoining with Rock the Block, I'm not the businessman that applied for that. I know that I have signed a bunch of permits, but I wouldn't want other people joining in on taking advantage, my competitors taking advantage of the thing that I'm establishing. So I think there's a lot of moving parts here, but I definitely, there's no way that I could staff this thing all summer long. There's just no way.
So if I can make a suggestion, because you have on Thursday nights, you have Rock the Block, and you also have the art walk that takes place. So maybe doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, anything outside of that would need to be a special permit. And then run it from 5 o'clock till either midnight or 2 a.m.
I think I would also, my personal comment is, I'd love to, and maybe the chief has some, I'd be interested in his opinion, but the midnight to 2 a.m. hour always, worries me with people being out and about. Just seems like anything bad that happens seems to happen in those hours. So, and I think downtown the establishments that are open past midnight would be Gaslight, Office. I can't think of anything else open past midnight down there, so I think that might be opening maybe a can of worms a little bit. But, Chief, if with the mayor's blessing, sorry, don't mean to be managing this meeting.
So again, I appreciate the fact that there's new people on council, but we absolutely advocated strongly for don't make us go till 2 a.m. So we did put it into that ordinance, the expectation of it shuts off at a normal time. The incentive to be mobile after midnight is just not there. They're by then they've picked their destination spot. And so again, the budget that I have submitted does not include coverage till 2 a.m. If it it would be more if I got to cover it till 2 a.m. And that becomes much more likely to run into problems. That's much more likely to come into arrest. You know, by 2 a.m. after you give them those extra 2 hours of kind of destination celebration, much more likely for that to end up in an arrestable situation. So we wanted to curtail that down. So we want to facilitate the blossoming of our opportunities downtown, but not have it turn into a urine-soaked, stitches, ambulance runs. We don't want to see it get to that. So we're doing everything we can to keep it reasonably and really kind of a good quality of life benefit to our community.
The only thing I'd say is if we do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, can we just auto put in an exception for Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day to include that Sunday night? Just, to me, it seems ridiculous to have them apply for those extra ones. On a regular week, it makes sense, but the holiday weekend is kind of assumed that, chances are they'll have events, and with July 4th being on a Sunday.
Okay. All right, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, Sundays, on holiday weekends to include the holiday.
Yep.
That falls on a Monday. And then 5 to midnight.
Yeah.
Okay, and then as far as what we have up on we're running behind here, but what we have up on the screen up there, does that area look good to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
I know we don't have Center Street on there, which kind of leaves some places like Rib and Chop out. I don't know if you want to add that in, and then is
David is
coming
not.
down.
Oh, Dave
it's
is not.
David.
Okay.
Center is there. We tried to target every one of the destination
I
points.
gotcha.
I think they're all covered there.
Okay, then the only thing that I would ask, and just because I see what's taking place with Gaslight themselves, they're using Oak Street this year. They own that lot
Oh, right.
down at the old Stock
The
Ups.
stock-ups, yeah.
And there is already like 4 concerts already scheduled
7.
for that. Okay, 7 concerts scheduled for that lot. So I would suggest that maybe we extend it down to that lot. 'Cause
Just
a lot of people go down there anyway, so just take it 1 block over.
Okay.
So Elm down to Oak.
And
I
then
know
up to
their
Midwest?
first concert's on the 3rd, which
Down
is a
to
Thursday,
Midwest,
which
yeah.
is
Okay.
the same night as Rock the Block, so you're gonna have them going back and forth
Yep.
that night for sure.
Busy night.
yeah.
So you guys are all right with moving that to Oak and down to Midwest? Okay. Do we have all that memorialized?
I think so. Mr. Mayor, what I'd
Okay.
recommend is we prepare a minute action for your consideration along the parameters you just set. And we may need to do, in order to meet time for the Memorial Day weekend, we may need to have a special meeting to make that happen. Okay?
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds
Good.
good.
Do you have anything else before we go in there?
One quick thing. With respect to the parking manual discussion this evening, there is an amendment that we would request your consideration for under Councilwoman Ingebrigtsen's introduction of the measure to include a parking permit for folks whose neighbors oftentimes take up their on-street parking in front of their homes. And with respect to the picture you saw at the beginning of the meeting, wherein that captures a real-life example of what's happening right now, most of those neighbors that are behind those line of vehicles have zero access to parking in front of their homes, and therefore this permit would apply quite nicely in terms of preserving space in front of their homes when neighbors would just as soon take it up with their vehicles. 11 of them, that's right.
And those
yeah.
are all owned by one person.
Yep, that's exactly right. This doesn't happen, everywhere in the community, but it does happen to the extent that I would suggest the utility that a permit like this would provide could be useful. This is certainly an extreme example. But with an amendment to the manual tonight, you could accommodate a permit having this type of value if you so choose. As I mentioned to the mayor in the pre-meeting, if you want to table this adoption of the manual in order to discuss this a little further, that's certainly an option as well.
Councilman Gamron?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a problem that needs addressed. I'm curious, how do we go about designating which areas would be able to take advantage of this permit? You know, under what conditions? Obviously, maybe that one, but is it, you know, that would just be what I need to know, is what conditions could a street or a neighborhood take advantage of parking permits to resolve these sorts of issues? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, basically it would be driven by the homeowner who is facing that situation to come in and say, hey, I've got this problem. I'd like to have this permit invoked in my neighborhood so I can guarantee that there's some space in front of my home to park our own car. So it would be contingent upon that neighbor coming in to visit with us. And it'd be the PD that would be extending that.
I know we're wanting to move on, but I'd want to ask Mr. Henley, while we're on the subject, do we have a legal issue when someone has a registered vehicle on a public street and we're telling them they can't park it there? It seems to me like we might be in for a huge mess, and I would like to hear what Mr. Henley.
Sure. No, I think in fact we have the obligation to, in a lot of ways, protect neighbors from people who would come in and just block off other people's access, ingress, egress, not let their kids play out there for fear that the kids are getting between the two vehicles. I mean, there's that much space between these vehicles sometimes, and the kids are running back and forth, or they start playing hide and seek or something that nobody else can be able to see them. So absolute obligation, it seems to me. This is a good thing, I believe, to be out there and protecting the public from these type of people who would depreciate other neighbors' property values. You couldn't even sell a house here. Somebody tried to. They couldn't sell their house because people drive up, look at that, and drive away. And for public safety and for aesthetics. So we have all of those things that we would be, I think, important to talk to and to utilize in the decision making. And all of those would tip the scale in favor of the city exercising its authority to protect its citizens and their property values.
General welfare. Well, then one person's monopolizing the entire public street.
It's singular private use.
Yes.
Both sides.
I mean, like, think about like schools, like down at Park School. Like,
Yeah.
there are permits at residential homes
Lisa,
around Park School.
You want to
like-
bring up that amendment for the mayor? This time, on the
Now
script.
or
On the
later?
floor.
On the floor,
On the
in the
floor,
script.
yes.
It's in the script, yeah.
It's in here. We should probably get on that.
Okay, good.
We're gonna get some angry constituents.
Working.
It's working. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor
Good evening.
Field, members of the council. My name is Keith Tyler. My address is 140 North Center, Casper. I'm here tonight on behalf of the owner, 4U2C, Limited Liability Company, to speak in favor of the zone change. We are trying to make this piece of property more marketable by making a 1 acre lot at the hard corner there and rezoning it, a zoning designation that would actually promote development. R1 is an impractical zoning classification for that property. We've known that for quite some time, but have waited for buyers to come to us that had their project, and then we could rezone it in accordance with their needs. But that has failed us, and we're looking to now rezone it, make it ready for someone who has a project. It'll be hopefully a medical type office or some sort of retail location, but should be compatible with the other neighborhood uses.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Tyler? All right. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
See our new stopwatch here. Okay, are there any other individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues involving the zone change? Okay, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues involving the zone change, please approach your lectern. All right, there being no others to speak for or against the issues involving the zone change, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a zone change for proposed Lot 3, Methodist Church Edition MBA, which is currently described as a portion of Lot 1, Methodist Church Edition.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Gamera, seconded by Councilmember Pollock. Discussion? Councilman Gamera.
Thank you, Keith, for joining us this evening and for your public comment. I did just want to acknowledge we did receive a letter from a gal that sounds like she lives there in the northern corner of that intersection. She did speak in opposition to it. It sounds like she'd lived there for a long time, even before Wyoming Boulevard went through there. So I don't know if I remember before that. I'm a young summer child, so that's before my time, I think. But I did just want to acknowledge her. I can see where she's coming from, but the corner, caddy corner from that is the one that we just lifted the restrictions of that C2 zoning on, correct? For the, so the development go over there, over on the east. So it sounds, conducive to what we got going on over there. As the gentleman mentioned earlier, I don't see anybody buying that for residential. So if somebody can do something with the land, I think that's a good thing. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, any amendments? All right, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Councilmember Engebretson and Mayor Friel abstaining, motion passed.
Council will now discuss the parking regulations and restrictions. Council will consider a resolution and an ordinance for this matter, and both will be open to public comment. Please read the resolution by title only.
A resolution adopting the City of Casper parking manual and establishing application fees, permit fees, and fine schedules pertaining to parking.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve the resolution just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, not a whole lot to report. You've gone through this discussion quite a bit by now. The difference with respect to tonight's discussion and dialogue on the part of the council and the public is with regard to not only considering the parking changes in ordinance via third reading tonight, but also with regard to the resolution you have in front of you right now pertaining to the companion work in the form of the parking manual that staff has also been putting together in concert with your direction on the same. There is a possibility that council will be entertaining an amendment this evening. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I defer back to the chair.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Is there anybody that would like to comment on this?
Good evening, Dennis Steensland, 533 South Washington. That's what brought me down here tonight, the 12th and 13th issue. Of all the discussion I've heard, I've never heard of a length or a time frame for this. So I'm here to find out if it's a 6 months trial program or a 1 year trial program, or if it has any beginning and ending date, or if it's something that's going to be put in place and then let go or not enforced. My other part of that question that I wrote down anyway, did prior councils had parking issues or parking rules and regulations? Are they still in place, and do they still apply for everything other than 12th and 13th? So that's my main questions tonight. I came down early just because I had nothing to do. I always get an interest. It's always interesting to go to your pre-meetings. Heaven forbid us to ever offend the drinkers in Casper, Wyoming. I mean, if there isn't a business that generates money for the city's coffers, it must be the liquor business, because we spend an extremely amount of time on the liquor. And if you can't get enough liquor by 12, to me, you've got a little bit of a problem anyway. So I'm not in favor of bending over backwards to accommodate the liquor stores or the dealers to generate tax dollars. So, which brings me to my next note, which is kind of out of line as far as your procedure goes, but you've got a Nolan edition down further on your agenda tonight. Does the Nolan edition tell me Plains Furniture Project? Yes, it does. I'm nodding. Okay. I was able to acquire this 47-page document on Nolan's progress since true drilling has taken. If this represents 2 years' work, 47 pages, and absolutely nothing that you could see being accomplished over there, and that was designed to generate tax dollars as well. It's set for 2 years. It hasn't generated a...
Mr. Steensland, if I could stop you just for a moment.
Sure.
We're talking about the parking.
Okay.
And so I need to keep it to that. Earlier, when you had comments is when I wish you would have brought that up to us. So if we could just get back onto the public hearing for parking, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. You'd think I'd know that by now, wouldn't you? Okay, I'll just maybe stick around a little longer than I'd planned to. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Steensland? Councilwoman Lutz.
Sorry, maybe we can wait until discussion, but I do think he brings up a good point. I don't know that we've actually formally dedicated review time, but we have been very clear that it's temporary. So I think he brings up a good point that we probably should formalize when we are going to review this.
Mr. City Manager, we do not have a time in there, do we? A time frame, okay. Councilman Nell.
I don't think we're required to do so, because this is an ordinance that we're passing, so it's endless until we decide to review it and change it. Isn't that true?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Nell, given that this does have implications with respect to changing the law and those kinds of things, council does have the authority to decide when the provisions in this particular ordinance may not be applicable or appropriate or in line with the vision that you have from, for the community. So I do agree that you get to dictate how and when those effects take place. However, it would require an amendment to the ordinance you're about to consider on third reading at some point in the future in order to change the scope of whatever it is that is passed this evening.
Councilman Gamera.
So apologies if maybe I didn't understand that correctly, but my read of it, as Councilman Nell suggested, is that by its nature, it's kind of set for an indefinite amount of period, and it would require an amendment to alter it at a later time, but could we not simply ask city staff to put it on the agenda, a year from now, so that it does come before us and we can make a determination at that time whether an amendment's needed or not? Does it need to be part of the ordinance, or can we just, ask you fine folk to remind us in a year and we'll revisit it? Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gamroth is correct. Absolutely.
Okay. Councilmember Pollock.
Along the same line, I know we've talked about this as being a pilot program. So in my mind, a pilot program is not necessarily temporary. It's to see if it should be expanded into other areas, right? So if we're talking about it, I want to give a little bit of clarity to this. If we're thinking, folks, property owners may be spending money to change their to change that parkway. I want to give some clarity before people start spending money doing that. Not that we're, guaranteeing that this is going to go on forever, because we don't have the authority to do that. But maybe we should be a little more specific about what we mean by a pilot program.
Councilman Nell.
I concur completely, and I don't think this was intended to ever have time limits on it. And that's what I was trying to articulate. I think we had agreed to put this into place and use it as a pilot for other neighborhoods. And like Ms. Pollock just said, we're going to ask somebody to spend $2,000 to pave in front of their house, and a year from now tell them, well, time's up. Thanks for improving our parkway, but you can't park there anymore. This is an ordinance, and once it's passed, it's in. And so it would take, I guess if for some reason something wasn't working, it could always be revisited down the road like we do all the time. But I don't think this was ever intended to have a time limit on it. In my mind, it wasn't.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
So how I think we should proceed is move forward with, obviously with this, and because I think we're in concurrence, we want to move forward with this, but I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that people are going to be making $1,000, $2,000 improvements. But if alterations, sorry, not improvements, alterations. But we do have our staff come back to us in a year to say, okay, this is how it's working. There is the possibility, I think we need to be aware, the possibility that it may not work well. And I think that's the risk we're taking on it. And that's the risk that I think some of the neighborhood or the homeowners are going to have to take, because this may come back and this may not work well. We just may end up seeing this. My hope is that it's going to work well, but my hope is that the staff's going to come back in a year and say, and the chief's going to come back and say, we're having no issues, we're having all this stuff's working out great, no complaints. But I think it's the risk that we're going to have to take, and then but have feedback to find out if this is working or not. That's how I think we should proceed with this.
Okay, so is there anybody else that has any public comment on this?
We're in the discussion.
It's all right.
Jeez, sorry.
All right, there being nobody else with public comment, we'll go to the discussion. Any further discussion on this?
Yeah, no, I'll laugh.
Okay, all right. Then we'll move on to amendments. Councilwoman Ingebretson.
I would like to propose an amendment to the parking regulations. I move to amend the portion of the parking manual, which is referenced in the resolution. The section I want to amend is titled Critical Parking, School Parking Permits. I want to add language creating neighborhood overflow parking permits as referenced in the document before you that was prepared as possible amendment to the parking manual.
All right, so Councilwoman Ingebretson has the proposed amendment on the table. Do I have a second?
Second. Sorry, second.
Second by Councilwoman Lutz. Any discussion on that? Councilmember Pollock.
The beginning of the amendment, we're designating that folks who would be eligible to apply for this sort of parking permit would be those who are living in proximity to someone who has a total of 4 or more vehicles and/or RVs. I'm curious about how we'll know that, how we'll be able to. I know we can check, who's got what registered to where, but if it's a apartment building, for instance, and there's many different occupants in there, how will we know, and how will we monitor and enforce that?
Mr. City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Pollock, you ask a good question. The review process that would be undertaken to consider whether or not a permit of that nature is appropriate would go through that exact analysis to determine whether or not there is an inappropriate command of the public space to the extent that the property owner adjacent to that issue would have to have some level of guarantee by virtue of this permit in order to help preserve that person's access to the same public right-of-way or corridor. But you've hit the nail on the head in terms of those questions that need to be answered in order for the department, the police department that is, to feel comfortable that a permit is warranted.
Another question along the same lines is this, you get this permit and it's yours forever, assuming that, that person may move or, changes could happen in the neighborhood. Is there some sort of, I don't see a time period in here, is it? Thank you. Okay, so there'd be some sort of, would it be reviewed each time somebody comes to renew their permit to check to see that in fact those conditions do still exist?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, you're correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Nell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if we're going to do the amendment, we should do it right off the bat. And I think 4 vehicles is too many, to be honest with you. The street I live on, if I put 4 vehicles on that street, my neighbor puts 4 vehicles, nobody else is parking on that street. So 4 is a lot. And I think the idea behind this is to keep people from flooding the parking in front of everyone's homes. And I just think 4 is too many. There's no point in doing it if we're going to allow them to have 4 or 7 or 11. It's all the same. Each household, I understand, we have a husband and a wife drive a car and maybe they have 2 kids and there's your 4 vehicles. But at some point we have to be responsible homeowners and maybe park in our driveway or in our, I don't know what the answer is. I understand the reason for this. I know it's creating a huge issue in some neighborhoods like the picture we saw earlier, but I still think 4 is too many. If we're going to go this far, it's just a thought since we're in the middle of the amendment.
Mm-hmm.
What are you suggesting?
I know just one car sounds foolish, but I think you have to give a husband and wife and maybe a kid a place to park. But it seems to me that they should have to use a driveway or something. I don't know. It almost seems like 2. If you take a street like mine, it's got what would we have? And I'm guessing real quick, 20 houses in that one block, and you allow 4 vehicles per house. That's 80 vehicles. They're not even going to fit on the street. Somebody's going without. So it seems to me that any more than 2 per household on the actual street is a problem. And that's not accounting if you have a guest show up. So.
Councilwoman Ingebretson.
I think 4 is reasonable. We're in an environment to where most people have a company vehicle. So usually you have 2 personal vehicles and a company vehicle and maybe a boat or an RV or something of that nature. Generally, if there isn't enough parking, not all streets are as narrow as yours. So I think 4 is a reasonable place to start, just because I think that if you have a company vehicle, a husband and a wife, and a kid, you're kind of just out. So I think if we limited it to 2, that's too restrictive.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Ingebretson. I have 3 kids that are driving right now, and so with that. And we do have a driveway, and then if you don't have a driveway, you kind of look at those things. And so I think 4 is reasonable, because I do agree that I think there are a lot of families that do have lots of whether it's a company car or kids. And so, like I said, I've got 3 kids driving right now. And so that would put me in. I do have a driveway, thankfully, or else I'd be getting a permit. But to me, I think that this is a pretty reasonable, and 4 is a lot better than 11. So I think it's doable.
Councilmember Pollock? And I'll come back to you.
I agree with Councilman Nell that if everyone parks 4 vehicles, we're still gonna run into an issue, but I think what we're trying to address here is just the more egregious sort of situations and mitigate those versus, the ebbs and flows of like traditional neighborhood parking situations. So for me, setting it a little higher is okay. I don't know if it'll, probably won't solve all of the problems, but it will at least give us a place to deal with some of the really, incredibly impactful situations that are going on around town. But I also agree, people have a lot of cars these days, and we're not necessarily equipped to deal with all of them. So certainly encouraging folks to park in driveways whenever possible to free up street parking is also, I think, it helps with congestion for sure.
Councilman Gamrot?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one question and then one follow-up statement. So my understanding is that because this is the 3rd reading, when we vote tonight, it will become ordinance. So the discussion about the vehicles, agree with several of the comments. It's an issue that needs addressed, and 4 sounds like a reasonable amount to me. I guess my hesitation is that, judging by how our discussion on the parking manual and parkway permits and stuff has gone so far, I'm a little worried that this last minute amendment, perhaps there's things we haven't thought of, and, after having a few days of sleeping on it, we'll realize something. So I'm a little concerned about a last minute amendment. I don't know if it warrants, holding up the entire process, but it sounds reasonable. But again, that's my concern, is that we haven't had enough time to give it enough thought. Thank you.
Councilwoman Lutz.
So to be clear, when we're talking about the 4 vehicles, it also states that they only have critical parking adjacent to the permit holder's residence. So I think the way I read that is, if I had 4 vehicles, however many vehicles, I couldn't be like basically getting permitting in front of my neighbor's house to park all of my vehicles. It would still be limited to the space that was adjacent to my home. So if I have, like a decent sized lot and a bunch of sidewalk, then yeah, maybe 4 vehicles can fit there. But if you're on one of these teeny tiny streets and, maybe like a smaller like front end of the lot, it's very possible that only 1 vehicle is going to be permitted because that's the only space that's adjacent to your home. Can I get a confirmation that I'm reading that correct?
Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Actually, I'm sorry we didn't have more time at the pre-meeting to go over this. The 4 vehicles, that's the trip as to whether or not a neighbor can apply to have a space in front of their parking designated simply for their parking. So you may be able to have 11 vehicles, and you can, and if nobody cares, you can park those on the street as much as you want. But if your neighbor says, I care, I want to have a clear space in front of mine, they can go to the city, and the city will say, fine, we're going to paint your curb, we're going to put up a sign, nobody but you can park there. So that's the deal. We're not trying to say we're going to take your cars, you can't have that many cars, but if you have that many cars, your neighbors are going to have some means of protection. And that's why we're doing it and that's why the amendment was drafted in that particular fashion.
Okay.
Councilmember Pollock.
So realistically, then if somebody did have 5 or 6 vehicles, they can still have them. They just need to, they may not be able to park directly in front of their neighbor's house if that person has reserved that spot for themselves. So they may have to park around the corner or something like that in an available space.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thank you. So maybe after hearing our attorney talk a little bit about that. I do like this amendment, and I support it. But if we haven't had a chance, I know we had to rush through our pre-meeting, and I know, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, Carter, we can table this portion of it to discuss it. And I hate tabling things. It's like my pet peeve. But is this something that maybe we need to table as a council to have that conversation, to flesh it out, to feel better about it? I like it, but I'm hearing there are some, hesitancies on a few things. So I'll just throw that out on the floor.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to Vice Mayor Pacheco's comment, this potential tabling of this particular motion does not have to derail the third reading of your ordinance today. These, while they're related because we're dealing with parking generally, the third reading of your ordinance can continue without affecting whether or not this amendment on this resolution can be tabled. So if indeed you do want to table this resolution, I would suggest you should continue considering the related ordinance on third reading and potentially pass that this evening without having to be obligated to pass the resolution with this amendment tonight.
Councilwoman Ingebretson.
I just want to point out that I think that something similar has come before council for many, many years, and it keeps getting pushed off and things aren't taken care of. So this isn't the first time something like this has been brought before council. This is, I don't even know how many times. So this is something that does need to be addressed by the council.
I agree. Councilman Nell.
I will say, after hearing Mr. Henley's explanation of the legal part of it, and understanding that I think 4 vehicles is fine. I think if the neighbor decides that he doesn't want them parked in there, then he can then go and clear up, and they can go park down the street or whatever. So the way the amendment's written, and the way that Mr. Henley has explained it, I'm fully on board with it. So there's no reservations on my part with the amendment. So, and Ray had mentioned there were a few of us that maybe I pull my reservation now. So.
Okay, so are we wanting to move forward on the amendment, or do we need further to table this for further discussion?
I move to go forward with the proposal and the
amendment. Okay. All right, any further discussion on this? Okay, so now we're going to, so we're going to vote on the amendment that was just presented. So please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye. Motion passed.
All right, do we have any other amendments? Okay, any further discussion? All right, there being no further amendments, any further discussion, please cast your vote on the amended ordinance. Or resolution, sorry. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye. Motion passed.
Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance amending various sections of Chapter 10.36, Parking of the Casper Municipal Code.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Nell, second by Councilwoman Ingebretson. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. No duplication of speakers will be allowed. Okay, any discussion? Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye. Motion passed.
All right, please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance approving the vacation and replat, creating Harmony Hills Edition Number 3, and approving the subdivision ratification agreement.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Gamroth. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. No duplication of speakers will be allowed. Any discussion? Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Councilmember Engelbrechtson and Mayor Friel abstaining, motion passed.
Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance approving the vacation and replat, creating the Kensington Heights Addition Number 3 subdivision.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Gamroth, second by Councilmember Pollock. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. Okay, any discussion? Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Councilmember Engelbrechtson and Mayor Friel abstaining, motion passed.
Please read the ordinance on first reading by title only.
An ordinance granting a franchise to Clarity Telecom LLC for the construction and operation of a cable system.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Gamroth. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We have the opportunity to consider a new franchise agreement this evening in the form of the city's relationship with a group called Clarity, which is a telecom entity that is new to our community. Just very similar to other franchises that you're familiar with, particularly in the telecom world, if you will, and those relationships with the city. This will be a 5% franchise fee, which is the federally mandated cap that a lot of telecom industries, in particular those here in Casper, agreed to pay. Furthermore, Clarity has agreed to be willing to provide internet services to our dispatch center, which is a rather unique feature. We certainly would recommend that indeed, pursuant to the good faith negotiations that this corporate neighbor has exhibited thus far, that this would be a welcomed service to our community, and would ask for your favorable consideration for the motion tonight.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments limited to 5 minutes and no duplication of speakers will be allowed. All right, any discussion? Councilman Nell.
Thank you, sir. This is a great thing for the citizens of Casper. This is going to make it much more competitive now in our internet and our cable services. It's going to up the service, and for people that are looking into our community to move here, this is and this isn't going to hurt a bit. So it's really good for us, and it's good for our people. So.
Any other discussion? Amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 11A1, a lease with Casper Youth Baseball for the Washington Park Ball Field. Item 11A2, a lease with Casper Baseball Club for the Crossroads 4 Ball Field. Item 11A3, a lease with Casper Softball Association for the 13th and Sycamore Ball Fields. Item 11A4, a memorandum of understanding with the Wyoming Department of Transportation for Traffic Control Box Public Art. Item 11A5, vacation and replat creating the Nolan Edition. Item 11A6, a contract with HDR Engineering for the Casper Rail Trail Extension Plan. Item 11A7, a contract with Golder Associates for the Solid Waste Planning Service Project. Item 11A8, a outside city sewer contract with J&T Properties. Item 11A9, a funding agreement with the Natrona County Conservation District. Item 11A10, a contract with Spare Labs for hosted transit management software. And item 11A11, passing the 2021-2023 council goals.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Pollock, second by Councilwoman Lutz. Mr. City Manager, would you like to make a comment on any of those items? Okay. Any abstention or nay votes? I'm going to abstain from item 11 to A5. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Please read the consent minute action title.
Authorizing a taxi cab company license for Eagle Cab to Michael Donahue, doing business as Eagle Cab, located at 2804 Coulter Drive.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda item just read.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilman Gamroth. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
All right, at this time, we ask council members to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. Councilwoman Ingebretson.
I have nothing.
Councilman Johnson.
I don't know if the council's got an appetite for it or not, but I had a concern from a constituent about our contractor licensing process, and I don't know a lot about it, and so maybe we can set aside some time to kind of go through that and maybe able to answer some questions he had or that I might have. So maybe we can put that on a work session agenda topic.
Can we add that to it? Okay, for a future date.
Okay, and other than that, I have nothing else.
Okay. Councilman Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. Went to a DDA board meeting last week. Went well. They had some very successful recent fundraising efforts, but again, always in need of support. So they have an awesome lineup scheduled for the year. Jalon Crossland and you know, some of the other folk, Chancey Williams, folks people really like to see. So again, I would encourage you, if you like the events down there, all free, consider supporting David Street Station. The police department held a barbecue, community barbecue last week. I believe many of us were there. Went very well. It was great to see the turnout, great to see the chief and a lot of the officers dealing out food. DJ Nike there having the music and stuff, so really good time. Wanted to thank them for hosting that. The Science Zone, their Idea Lab participants won the Destination Imagination. I believe it was the Nationals. I think they're going to Internationals, so pretty exciting stuff. Some local kids in the Science Zone's Idea Lab. Crushing it in that realm, so good luck to those guys as they go into that competition. Then I wanted to thank the Central Wyoming Trails Alliance for inviting me to their board meeting last week, as well as all the work they do in improving the trail system in our community. I was looking at some pictures just today, and I think they added a bridge, a bike bridge over there to the Squaw Creek area. So if you haven't explored that area, really cool, and thank you to that group for all the improvements they're doing in our community. That's all. Thanks.
Councilman Nell.
I am a liaison to the Contractor Licensing and Appeals Board, so if you want to forward my email to them, I'd be happy to help answer any questions they might have. Regional Water Board meeting today. Of course, we're in budgets just like the city is. And I just want to say, after sitting through that last night and the very healthy discussion that we as a council had with our department heads and with you, Carter, I really appreciate the hard work you guys have done to try to put into that budget. I know it's a lot of work, and I know you have us or me, I'm partly henpecking you, and I hope you don't feel that way. I'm just trying to make sure I'm doing my diligence as well. But I really appreciate the work you guys have put in, and I think the citizens of Casper should be really happy with our city manager's office and our department heads and their ability to bring a balanced budget in times like we're in right now. So I just wanted to say thank you, and your hard work does not go unappreciated. So that's all I have.
Councilwoman Lutz.
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember Pollock.
Nothing from me.
Vice Mayor Pacheco.
Thank you. I just had one comment. I just want to just mention how well I think our transportation has been going for the last couple weeks. And I think that's attributed to the fantastic work and the ground that the city staff has put together. I see them running around, picking up people, and so they've done a fantastic job. And so every time I see it running, I'm very happy and very proud that we and the city took that mantle and are doing a fantastic job. So just wanted to get that out there, that been seeing that, and so nice job, you guys. Thank you so much for your hard work.
Okay, just to segue a little bit off regional water, it looks like there will probably be a rate hike. We don't know what it's going to be. It doesn't seem like it's going to be extreme by any means, but it's going to happen. I wanted to bring up the Chamber of Commerce had their annual dinner, and kudos to the chief. The police department received an award from them. So I appreciate all the hard work coming out of the police department. And then Kyle stole my thunder, but the community, I got to tell you, the community event last week, and to tell you this, Chief, that I was very happy to see the outcome and the amount of people that came down here. I think there was 800 hamburgers and hot dogs that were cooked and put out, and it was awesome to see this street right out front just full of people, and the interaction that was taking place and the support from the city for the police department. So very happy to see that, and I appreciate you doing that, and I think that was an awesome turnout. Other than that, that's all I have. So the next meetings of the City Council will be a budget work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Wednesday, May 19th, 2021 in the council meeting room. And a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, May 25th, 2021 in the council meeting room. The next regular council meeting will be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, June the 1st, 2021 in the council chambers. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Pollock, second by Councilwoman Ingebretson. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
All right. Thank you.
What did Kyle say he was, a summer child?
Summer?
That's not